good morning, afternoon, and evening. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the ninth edition of the World Intellectual Property Forum. The destructive force of Corona has hit us like a world war, or like a meteor would have struck the earth. But today is the World IP Day. We are gathered here to admire, appreciate, and celebrate the creative process and the healing effect that it has had on our physical and mental health. At the physical level, there are persons who have been affected, and there are others who are carriers or highly vulnerable. At the emotional level, there are issues of isolation as there are issues of togetherness. One question which everyone wonders about today is, will we ever return to the old normal? But irrespective of time or place, few things had immensely helped us. In a record time, our scientists and inventors have produced vaccines and drugs which will not only save lives but will help us and our children remain healthy and safe. Although the AI solutions have contributed to a great extent in this, we have our inventors and creators to thank. AI solutions have been created where we can screen large crowds of up to 200 people per minute for COVID. Drones are being used to make deliveries in remote areas. Programs like AlphaFold are contributing to predicting 3D structures of a protein based on their genetic sequencing. Healthcare applications like Practo have helped people get diagnosed from the safety of their homes. iRobots have helped quarantined doctors to carry out their tasks. 3D printed nasal swabs have been most useful. A Bangalore headquartered nanotechnology startup has created a Corona oven which can disinfect large surfaces within minutes. We have all these creators to thank for keeping us healthy and safe. The book, music, and films produced at this time has kept us informed, entertained, and enriched. AI has once again helped companies like Netflix understand increased interest in international content, and OTT subscribers have gone up 60% as consumers are now getting used to paying for content. We have authors, publishers, film producers, artists, and singers to thank for in this great effort in preventing us from getting into deep depression. The cell phone companies, computers, internet apps, and software like Zoom and Team have helped us remain connected. We would have been financially and socially crippled had it not been for the IT and telecom companies. To thank all of these great creators, I wish to cut a cake as a symbolic gesture to salute their efforts. This is a cake made at my home, so obviously does not have the kind of finesse which one would normally have. This is Happy World IP Day to all of you. Please take a bite and then I'll take a bite. It is delicious. So, this is wishing all of you a happy World IP Day. Incidentally, there are many articles on the online cake cutting problem. You may like to read one by Toby Walsh, which explores concepts of fair division and connects it to dispute resolution. But let me assure you that today there will be no shortage of cake, as another cake is coming up soon. But before we come to the second part of the celebration, just a few words on what has been happening in our IP world. There are a few trends which are worth mentioning. First is the ease with which courts at all levels have taken to virtual or hybrid hearings. Occasionally, the connectivity issues are faced, but by and large, all sorts of hearings, whether interlocutory or final, evidence, appeals, writs, or mediation are being taken up. Diverse range of attorneys and law offices from all over the country, from various cities, are participating in these hearings. Second is an increase in SEP or Standard Essential Patent litigation, showing that the world has some faith, or the right owners have faith in the Indian courts as a relief-giving country which will protect patent owners. This may be because of several reasons. For example, the market for Chinese companies and their products has increased, and they are mostly the defendants in these cases. The speed with which Indian trials are being conducted, and so litigation appears to be a viable option. The possibility of getting interim injunctions and damages, and an inherently fair and unbiased system. Third is the abolition of the IPAB. One view is that this is just an ordinance and may not last. Another view is that in any case it will take at least 6 months to transfer the cases to the High Court. A third view is that the load on the High Court might be a bit too much and may even lead to some jurisdictional issues. For example, a suit for infringement may be pending before the Delhi High Court and a cancellation petition before the Madras High Court, and so on. A fourth area of recent development are the line of cases relating to trademarks involved with Section 79 of the IT Act and the well-known intermediary defense. Here, what is the due diligence required of an intermediary is increasingly coming up before the Indian courts for decision. Finally, there are some copyright cases which involve the underlying rights and whether they continue to exist when absorbed into a film or lose their status and protection, and how music is to be evaluated. I shall now come to the second part of our celebration, which is to wish one of the greatest legal IP jurists who is amongst us today, Sir Robin Jacob, who shares his birthday with the World IP Day. My colleague has written a poem on Sir Robin Jacob, which I shall now read. Dear Sir Jacob, I wish you a very happy birthday. Whatever I may say of your tall figure, it shall be half as I would say. You have given creativity wind under its wings, awakening the world to IP and other things. A visionary sans fear, you've traveled far and near, from Trinity to Gray's Inn, to the bar, from the bench. You have guided us always to think beyond and fresh. Once Lord Justice and always a sharp, acerbic critic, a teacher and a perennial mentor. You have always pushed every limit, spanning 7 seas with your knowledge and flair. You are revered by inventors, innovators, and even naysayers. The world's going to forever remember your name, standing tall as you are in the IP Hall of Fame. It therefore is another beautiful coincidence, I say, to have your birthday celebrated as World IP Day. Let me now cut a cake for Sir Robin Jacob. Happy birthday, Sir Robin Jacob. And so I will offer the cake to Sir Robin Jacob. And I must have another bite. With this, I conclude this short welcome, and I wish you all a great IP, World IP Day, and a great seminar. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to the World IP Day and to the World IP Conference 2021, which is being held on a virtual platform. Our ancestors might surely disagree that 2020 is the worst year on record. Sure, frightening things are happening, but many similar things happened in the past as well. 2020 wasn't the worst year for intellectual property, but it wasn't particularly eventful too. Despite global lockdowns, the IP world was certainly not at a standstill. From the impact of COVID-19 on innovation to the ever-changing landscape of IP protection around the world, we had plenty to discuss about. After the initial chaos of company-wide transitions to work from home, we faced a great deal of uncertainty. Trial dates had been postponed, filing deadlines were extended, everything was in a state of suspended animation as different states and countries announced their own rules. However, one thing was clear: we needed a path forward. This meant that we had to create, we had to innovate. Our challenge that the companies severely faced in 2020 was the concern that the innovation pipeline flow may dry up if the remote working continues. Initially, the companies did their best to function with their office temporarily closed and teams fragmented. There were enough previously shelved projects that they finally had time to revisit. I am sure we have observed that patent filing was strong in the first few months of the pandemic. Stuck at home, teams had more time to go back and finish writing invention disclosures. But are new innovations coming into the pipeline as we socially distance and work remotely? The pandemic has cut off information that occurs effortlessly when teams are physically together. These informal conversations and exchanges of ideas are hard to mimic in the electronic world. What could be the possible solution to this in 2021? Certainly, not all innovators need to be in the workplace to do their jobs. Software engineers, for example, have long been able to work remotely, and they have been able to maintain, if not increase, their production and productivity during COVID-19. However, the challenge is to get the innovators who need lab environment working safely on site. The companies are now talking and taking all measures to secure personnel, protective equipment, and keep other employees at home so that their innovators, especially those needing lab conditions, could continue working safely on site. The goal has been to maintain any disruption to innovation, the company's lifeblood. The sign that certain sectors have restored to the above measures is the ramp up in the innovation in response to COVID-19 to create a boom, particularly in the life sciences and technology fields. Moreover, software companies have rapidly introduced products to facilitate remote working. There are new platforms to facilitate digital workflows. Some companies also introduced virtual rooms in an attempt to recreate the effortless flow of information that occurs when teams are in the same physical space. Electronic signatures have also been widely adopted and video calls have become standard. The real question which still lingers is what long-term impact will COVID-19 have on innovation and IP strategy? What will happen to IP filing in 2021 and beyond? COVID-19 is terrible, and let's not blame the virus alone. We also need to look inwards, since there are challenges on the policy, strategic and legislative fronts. Attention which will help us counter the ill effects of COVID-19 and better predict the fate of IP filings in 2021 and beyond. On the policy and legislative front, an important global topic of interest is the relationship between different nations, particularly the developed and the developing nations, concerning intellectual property related frameworks. The important question here are whether enforcing IPR through trade laws and trade concessions would motivate the developing countries to join the club in support of unified global IPRs, or are there factors that constitute such real differences in economic interests between developing and developed countries to threaten this goal? A wealth of academic research has documented the relationship between the strength of a country's intellectual property protection and the extent of trade, foreign direct investments and technology transfers it enjoys. In an ideal world, WIPO and WTO would drive cooperation and management between different countries because of their broad membership and technical expertise. But due to institutional and ideological reasons, both organizations are inherently limited in what they can do. Particularly, WIPO does play a constructive role in providing technical advice and capacity building on request to member states on intellectual property laws and other issues. However, the game changer would be intellectual property agencies of leading nations. They should take a leading role in operationalizing their strategy to engage with developing countries interested in improving their intellectual property systems. This would complement and extend similar convening and capacity building work between being performed by WIPO. They should also create a number of working groups on various patent assessment issues and potential harmonization efforts. In addition, more leading nations should work with third party to organize a global innovation policy conference that would focus on these nations and help them learn from each other, including how to develop a stronger IP system. If the world is going to maximize its potential for global innovation, it will need leading countries to reorganize and recognize that new energy, new tactics, and a new strategy are needed to encourage more nations to do more contributing and less detracting and detracing from global innovations. Moving forward will require several actions, including number one, a broader reframing of IP, trade and innovations. Number two, a coherent all-point strategy in which committed nations and their key innovation supporting agencies and institutions actively advocate for IP and contest the activities of the IP skeptics on virtually every front. And number three, expanding non-agreement cooperation. These recommendations are in addition to the ongoing role trade agreements, whether bilateral or regional, can play in improving the international framework for intellectual property and innovation. The role of IP provisions in trade agreements only gets more important with the increasing knowledge intensity of modern trade and economic activity and the need for greater levels of global innovation. In 2021, to maximize global innovation, the international community needs to forge a stronger and more wide-ranging consensus on the importance of IP to every country, developed and developing alike. It goes without saying that a more robust IP system will give birth to more innovations and thereby more IP filings across the globe. Unprecedented time calls for unprecedented measures. Therefore, on the strategic front too, the post-pandemic world will see more strategic alliances not only between different countries, developed and developing alike, but also between small, medium and large businesses for fast innovations. As per a PwC report, collaboration is already a priority for many CEOs. One such example is, in the Indian context, is the collaboration between the esteemed Oxford University and Serum Institute of India to produce 1.6 billion COVID vaccines. The digital future, which will be forged by cloud services, smart mobility, social media, IoT, artificial intelligences, and big data analytics power, which will help each and every business to flourish and grow rapidly. But all these won't be possible under one roof. Only an industrial integration can provide these. People are keenly aware that they are back to work and getting vaccinated against COVID because of innovation. And in the wake of the pandemic, everyone from the gurus of the Silicon Valley to lawmakers, to law enforcers, to law practitioners are responsible to pump reform into patents and IP in general. When we reform, when we see reforms directed at generating more hard innovations, the patent respect will follow. It usually does. Like they say, every cloud has a silver lining. The pandemic may have slowed down the world, but has accelerated innovation in a way we have never seen before. I strongly feel it is a dawn of fast-paced innovations, strategic collaboration, which will be the solution to all the challenges thrown to us in 2020. So innovations, more innovations, and protecting those innovations will transform our new world to the old normal. I take this opportunity to thank the organizers, particularly the young team of Naveen and Jeet Agarwal, who are the organizers of WIPF, and I thank them for making me the keynote speaker for the third time in a row. I also compliment the entire team that WIPF has grown from strength to strength and they are doing good service to the industry. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste from India. Wishing you all good health, and to those who are affected due to COVID, a speedy recovery. It is my privilege to address at this 9th World Intellectual Property Forum. This past year has put us into an unprecedented situation. It has been altering and alerting for the world, which has forced us to think of new ways of working that is efficient into situation such as the present. With regards to the field of intellectual property, as all of us move toward the wave of vaccination, I wonder, would we have ever reached this stage if it wasn't stringent IP laws exist? The times have been equally unprecedented for intellectual property field as well, where on the one hand, we have seen the scientists all over the globe working so hard to invent these vaccines. We have also seen pharma giants waiving of their precious patent rights for the public good. It is undisputed that intellectual property laws have played a vital role even in this pandemic as well. That innovators would not have been even half motivated if they were unsure about the protection of their rights with regards to the priceless knowledge which they have created through their R&D. The present year is not just a new decade starting with the new promises, but is also accumulation of various risk challenges that the previous year has posed to us. At the same time, the present year is a way forward that would set a new foundation of a better world by providing comprehensive solutions. We are witnessing a technological revolution that is consistently changing the way we live, work, and relate to one another. With computers on our palms, keeping us connected globally 24/7, to the increasing power of social media that is capable of tumbling governments, it is unlike anything that we have ever experienced before. Such radical changes have already laid out major challenges for IP administrations, policies, and governance. The internet, e-commerce, social medias, and the likes are a different field altogether, where imitation and infringement of copyright and trademark is ever increasing. Trade of counterfeit goods have also shown a stringent rise in troubling all the consumers and the company as well. Where the pandemic has necessitated people staying at home and work from home, The corporations are afraid of their data secrecy and the information which they share with the employees. There has always been a rise in unconventional intellectual property, but the current framework requires updating to give adequate protection for the such intellectual properties. And as intellectual property becomes ever more central to the knowledge economy, demands for IP rights continues to rise. That is why intellectual property administration needs amendments to keep up with the rising applications to ensure timely protection. But with every challenge, there is an opportunity. The developments that are creating these challenges are not negative in themselves. The need is to understand how they will impact the existing IP system and accordingly incorporate the needed solutions. It is now a known fact that intellectual property has gained attraction and will continue to do so with the higher speed. Globally, yes. I say this with joy that the people are now becoming intellectual property equipped or aware with the intellectual property and its power in the industry. From individuals to startups to small and medium enterprise to people who become aware of intellectual property are keen to create, protect, and commercialize the same. The freshest example can be seen from overwhelming numbers of invention and innovation came up in the lockdown phase. From robots dispensed at the entry to help the people sanitize to applications for consulting medical experts at the ease of being home to people creating the content online. COVID-19 has certainly sparked creativity all over the world and all around in all fields. Additionally, I specifically say this for India that in the time of COVID-19, we have also seen grassroots revival of India traditional knowledge. I say this with joy that people are now becoming aware of the power of intellectual property. From individuals to startups to small and medium scale industries, people have become aware of intellectual property and are not only aware, but they are keen to create and protect and commercialize the same. The freshest examples can be seen from overwhelming numbers of inventions and innovations that has come up in the lockdown phase. From robots dispensed at the entry of the help of people sanitized to application for consulting medical experts at the ease of being at home to people creating content online. COVID-19 has certainly sparked creativity all over the world and all around the subjects. Additionally, I specifically say this for India that in the time of COVID-19, we have also seen grassroots revival of India's traditional knowledge. Ayurveda, home remedies, and naturopathy was heavily resorted to and relieved upon for preventive measures. Benefiting from this popular demand of spices and herbs, farmers of Boriavi, a small village from the lush green belt of central Gujarat, got that traditional variety of ginger and turmeric registered under the Protection of Plant Variety and Farmers Act. Another example is the drastic shift in the global $145 billion beauty and cosmetic market that are using Ayurveda to cater the increasing demand of people who are turning to an ancient knowledge for the modern problems. On the end of corporate entities, heavy investment in R&D and proactive steps in protecting their intellectual property by companies of all sizes indicates their understanding of importance of intellectual property. It can be said that awareness of intellectual property in itself presents a solution to multiple issues for the current IP regime. In addition to this, government have also realized that intellectual property is the key factor and has to be encouraged to keep up with the needed rate of development. It is due to this that the government has introduced multiple policies to create IP conducive environment that not just encourages its creation, but also facilitate its strengthened protected intellectual properties. With addition to that, we have also seen recent development in the field of unconventional intellectual property. While there has been a rise in such applications, the legal system and judiciary have also started accepting the same and are willing to grant the protection to the such intellectual properties. The tribunals and judiciaries are also adapting the new technologies as is the need of an hour. They conducted the hearing via video conferencing during the present time when physical hearing was not possible. Amidst all this, very interesting development has also taken place in the field of open source. Though a lot many argue that the intellectual property and open source stands for things entirely opposite, I say that it is the middle ground, the best of both, that would be enable us to drive the most of any intellectual property rights. While the changes taking place are admirable, there is always a room for improvement. The current IP system is fit for many purposes, but there may be areas in which it needs to adapt. For example, artificial intelligence and the life science are two major areas of technology and scientific development that have raised important challenges for intellectual property. Along with the development of our IP system, we need to rigorously look into the policy change as well. Due to globalization and increasing technological advancement, the existing policies are required to revamp to keep up with the rapid developments. Even nations are required to form framework that ease the global trade while simultaneous protection of the national interest. The present time have caused the financial difficulties which have lowered the ranking of creation and protection of intellectual property in an entity's priority list. However, it is extremely important to understand that it is exactly the intellectual property that can help boost the revenues during such time. Concluding, I would like to say that the future seems bright and promising for intellectual property right field. The system cannot be said to be 100% effective and efficient. However, it is the constant attempt of stakeholders all around the globe that offers huge scopes of improvement. The existing architecture of the international system strengthen global corporations and support more effective IP policymaking. A step taken to register and protect the intellectual property is not looked up as a waste of money and tedious process anymore. Rightly, innovation getting the right protection is an asset more valuable than any other. I would end by saying that the purpose of intellectual property is only solved when it is rightly or justly enriched, not just its creator, but also to the community globally. With these words, I thank to organizers of WIPF, World Intellectual Property Forum, for inviting me to address at this forum, and wishing you all a successful conference. Thank you.